Light breaks the shadow of the weary heart. Truth cuts the dark like a flaming dart. Voices rising strong to lift the call. This is the time we give it all. Lynne Scott Haggerman bringing the fire. Words that ignite hearts burning higher. Faith and power, no chains can bind. Step into the light and leave fear behind.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Lynne Scott Haggerman Podcast, where truth has no filter, freedom is our mission, and the light of God exposes every work of darkness. I am your host, Lynne Scott Haggerman, survivor of child trafficking and underground experimentation by the government through MK Ultra mind control. I am the voice they tried to silence, and I am silent no more. Praise God. I am a child of God, a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ, and a friend of Holy Spirit, and my calling is clear and unwavering. I'm to expose darkness, elevate survivors and whistleblowers, reveal the truth, restore lives, and protect the little children. This broadcast airs Tuesday through Friday and Sunday at 2 o'clock Central Time across all of Patriot Prayer Network broadcast platforms. Today, I'm also an international human resource consultant, a marathoner, a weightlifter, living proof that restoration is possible in mind, body, and spirit. Please be sure to visit qgrit.org. That's God's aftercare plan for the little ones once they've been rescued from above ground and below ground trafficking, as well as to help individuals, adults with any type of trauma. Also, please be sure to go to liveyoungerwithlynne.com, where I'm an independent LifeWave distributor. It is the wearable med bed. Now let's continue bringing everything into the light and presence of God. Today's conversation is about discernment. It's rooted in awareness, because awareness creates choice, and history shows that people who recognize warning signs early are not powerless. They're prepared, and preparation is where hope lives. My guest today is independent war correspondent Michael Yon. He has spent years on the ground in regions most journalists will never dare to go to. He studied what happens when institutions lose contact with reality and society's normalized decline. The goal of our conversation is simple. I want to make sure to help Americans think clearly, stay grounded, and recognize what matters most, and recognize it early enough to act. Michael, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me on. I'm actually talking to you from the Netherlands, of all places. You might hear the wind whipping through the literally boat ropes outside. I'm not on a boat, but there's a lot of boats right out the window, and the wind is whipping up, quite cold. And actually Masako, my wife, and I, we are with Catherine Austin Fitz for the last several weeks. And so I'm in Catherine's studio, actually. Is a glorious studio. There's Gideon behind me, actually, which we're going to take back to Japan.
Yes. I love the picture of Gideon.
It's awesome, isn't it? And
It is.
so Catherine's actually gifting it to us. So you'll see that hanging later in Japan. And this is awesome. It's such a learning experience for those who don't know Catherine Austin Fitz. She's extremely, extremely knowledgeable and very good to follow. And actually she's got a report that comes out in paper, actually it's actually printed on paper still, the Solari report. So that's where I'm at. So I was on her show, I don't know, a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And then she invited Masako and I to visit in Netherlands, and we came over. I mean, because she's that serious. And so we've been talking for hours on end and talking about these issues that we're going to talk about today. For instance, Somaliland, gold and silver issues, and Panama, and so many more issues that are probably on a lot of people's minds with the economy and that sort of thing. I'm ready to roll. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. things that I actually study anyway.
Sure.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'll just
Yeah.
punt it back to you on things that I don't study.
So yes, I have been following you for a long, long time, Michael, and the way that you travel worldwide into places that no one ever goes, going up the Darien Gap, bring us live reporting in places where, and this is why you're a phenomenal independent journalist. You go where traditional journalists wouldn't dare to go. But of course, one of the reasons they wouldn't dare to go too is they don't want to bring us the truth like you do. And you are boots on the ground, seeing it from a view that the majority of people actually do not have. So I am definitely fully aware of the majority, I think, of your topics. And that's why I'm honored to have you. One of many reasons I'm honored to have you on today, because you have a perspective and a depth and breadth of experience that the vast majority of people just don't have. And I know that we have an international audience here. Of course, the majority are people in the United States, but still an international reach. And everyone is extremely concerned and wanting to know your perspective on several topics that you're an expert on, because we've had hundreds of people waiting for the show to start. And so I think we'll kick it off with Somalia. You have studied and reported on failed states like Somalia. And in the United States, we're uncovering extensive fraud and problems. So, what early warning signs appear long before a country collapses?
Well, starting with the Somaliland, Somalia, the country, but then
Yes.
I think in the United States, there may be a lot of news right now about Somaliland
Yes.
that Netanyahu just recognized as a sovereign state, as a new country, right? And if you want to know why Israel just recognized it, and the United States may follow soon, and maybe UAE and some others, why was that recognized? Well, actually, when you look at wars are about three things: routes, resources, and ideology, right? And
Right.
even the ideology almost always boils down to routes and resources. So I mean, it's really routes and resources, and but ideology as well.
Yeah.
But ideology deals with human resources, and so why did Netanyahu recognize Somaliland? Well, if you look at it where it is on the map, just look on the Horn of Africa there, as you can see across from the water where the new Somaliland is Yemen with the Houthis, right? And
Right.
the Houthis have closed down the Suez Canal, and so it's about routes and resources. Somaliland, the struggle to control the main maritime chokeholds in the world is serious. Many wars have been fought over it, and wars continue to be fought over it, and wars will be fought over it. And so now you see what the Suez Canal effectively closed for our traffic anyway, because the Houthis, close it with not much effort, actually. So Somaliland is right there on the battle zone. Also next door, Djibouti, where China has a presence, United States has a presence. I talked with the old ambassador from Japan there, actually. Everybody's involved with Djibouti, because Djibouti also, if you got your maps out, or if you have them in your head like I do, I have a whole atlas in my mind. So sometimes, sometimes when you hear me talk about things, it can get confusing unless you have a map out, unless you have an atlas in your head like I do, because I do travel around a lot, and ever since I was a child, I've always loved maps, so it's really paid off. But if you look at where these countries are, if you want to control the Red Sea, you'll need to. These are ideal places that somebody needs to be to control. If you want to be in control of those, like Suez Canal, and of course Israel wants to build the Ben Gurion Canal, and so there are other issues at hand. And so, but it deals with routes and resources controlling. Now, keep in mind, we're in 2026 now, and we've reached a point in history with the current weaponry, for instance, very low cost drones, that even third tier people, without not even nation states, can close or dramatically affect major chokeholds like Panama Canal, Suez Canal, Strait of Hormuz, or Bosphorus, or Strait of Gibraltar. There are Malacca, right? There are serious chokeholds that affect global trade, which really third tier people can close. And I say third tier people, I mean, you don't need aircraft carriers, you don't need submarines, you don't need any of that stuff. You don't even need multi-billion-dollar budgets. You just need the ability to put some drones onto cargo ships and set them on fire, right? And then the insurance people aren't going to go through those chokeholds, and you can launch those drones from hundreds of miles away. You can launch them from boats, you can launch them from airplanes, you can launch them from jungles and deserts, from the trunk of a car. You know, you can, these things are quite simple. So you don't need the high-tech satellites and whatnot. You just need a drone that can go over there and set something on fire. We've reached that point, but these chokeholds are just as important now as they've ever been. And keep in mind, the Suez Canal, which opened in 1869, at that point, the British Empire was king of the empires, and people began calling it, actually before it opened, that if the Suez Canal opened, it would be the spinal cord of the British Empire, which it became, right? There were some English people that were warning that if the Suez opened, that Egypt would eventually take it. And they did. Egypt did take it, right? And that it could devastate the British Empire, which that was one of the major points that did devastate it. There were others, but at the end of the day, the British Empire is really gone, other than the financial echoes of it. But insofar as the actual, you know, the ability to go to war with China and that sort of thing, that's gone. It's finished. And so that's all about routes and resources. Keeping in mind, all these empires that have come and gone have been about routes, resources, and ideology. So Somaliland, if you look at where it is on the map, you'll see it instantly tells the story what this is about. It has nothing to do with freeing people, has nothing to do with anything at all. This is what's important. If you want to be able to predict what comes ahead, with better certainty, there's never certainty, but let's say higher probability than the experts and what we're told, we have to deal with paradigms that are usable and predictive, right? So you have to have really good input information that is reasonably pure, and like 24 karat is the best. And you got to get rid of the mud as much as possible. That means watching zero MSN. That means no Fox, no CNN, none of that, right? None. That's right. None. Like, don't even pay attention to it. It's a waste of time. So any minute that you're spending on that, trying to work out if it's the truth or not, you're actually wasting time that you could have been researching something else. But at the end of the day, if your paradigms, if the way you look at the world is accurate, or let's say it's usable, let's say your model of the world is usable. Let's say, you know, gravity. I think if I drop this water bottle top, if I release it, it's going to hit the table. It did, because my paradigm is that gravity is at work, right? If my paradigm includes routes, resources, and ideology, and has actually nothing to do with we're going to save so-and-so people, because it's typically not about that. Sometimes it is, but not often. Usually on the big global scale, it's going to be about routes and resources and ideology. And so if your paradigm is accurate, then in your input information is accurate, then one of the things that you should not feel is surprise, right? You shouldn't be surprised when something happens. Like, you should not be surprised when, for instance, the death jabs are actually turn out to be weapons, which they obviously are. You shouldn't be surprised that our country has been flooded with invaders. You shouldn't be surprised that church burned down, in Amsterdam, in Netherlands, where I'm at now, on New Year's. That you shouldn't. I don't know how it burned down. It's been there since the 1800s. It's a magnificent church, or was. Now it's smoldering rubble. I don't know how it happened. It's pretty, I think we can all take a guess, but that's all it is at this point. But we've seen churches burning down all over the place. We've seen them burning down across Canada, United States, and actually magnificent places across Europe burned to the ground. And so there should be no surprise if we have an idea about what the beast is actually doing and their capabilities and willingness to do it, right? So when it comes to Somaliland, it's about control of that routes and resources.
So with the control of the routes and resources and not being surprised, you said several things I wanted to follow up on. What because I like to give people facts and information of do's and don'ts, so that way they can protect themselves, protect their family, protect their community, look out for their nation, help turn things around because everything's such a mess right now. So stop watching MSN or MSM. You're an independent war correspondent, an independent reporter, far from mainstream media. What has happened to mainstream media, Michael? Has it always been like this, and we the people were just asleep? Is it something that's been in the last few decades? I mean, what's going on? Because you can't believe a word they say.
Right. Now, keep in mind, I've actually never been a reporter, although there's thousands of articles that say I am. I'm just an
Okay.
analyst. I'm just an analyst. I have been a war correspondent.
Yeah.
I've written 6 books. 3 of those books are on information war, actually.
Yeah.
And those are only in Japanese because they were designed to wake up Japanese about things that the Chinese are doing with their information war. I've been all over China. In fact, I've spent more than 20 years in Asia. All over Asia, actually. I shouldn't say all over. How many countries are there in Asia? Arguably, I don't know, 36. I'm not sure. But I've been to 25 of them. And I've spent years in places like India, China, Nepal, Thailand, Taiwan, Japan, many more. Right. And
Right.
so I've got my feet on the ground about the situation over there, although it's a big place. Right. So there's always surprises there too, as well, because we don't know everything, obviously. And, as hard as you can study, but what we do know is our patterns. Some of the patterns are quite clear. Now, there's nothing new under the sun. The Bible is basically a survival manual, right? I mean, when you look at
say that.
I mean, the things that I study, and inevitably I'm like, this is going to be in the Bible too, and there it is, right? It's like, like your silver and gold will be kicked in the dust, and all this. I mean, these sorts of things are the war, famine, and pandemic. For instance, I thought that I had just noticed that after many years of study that pandemic, famine, and war always go together. And years ago, I was on a show, and one of my readers called in, and she said something like, you talk about pandemic, famine, and war as if you discovered that. And I said, well, proudly, proud. Yeah, pride goeth. And she said, you talk about that as if you discovered it. And I said, I did. And she's like, it's in the Bible. And I'm like, yikes, you're right. It is in the Bible. There you go again. So if you're going to plagiarize, go big. And so I mean, it's just in the back of my mind from years of study, things that you think you came up with, like, I've got this brilliant idea, and then they wrote about it in the Bible 2,000 years ago. It's a huge amount of stuff just is, and
Right.
And especially the patterns on how humans behave. It's all there, and anyway, enough of it's there that you can piece together a huge amount of things that are unfolding. And so now, when it comes to speaking of which, silver and gold, things that I've been watching very closely. And by the way, I'm not shilling silver and gold for anybody. Notice I never say, and go buy gold from so-and-so, right? I don't have any links on my sites. I don't do anything. But and even when I mentioned Solari, I don't have any relation with the Solari other than we're sharing information, right? So it's and I read them. That's it. That's it. There's no other relation. But when it comes to silver and gold, I'm studying it not just because it's wise to, old money is the smart money on this, but also because you can pick up signal in there. You can pick up signal about what's going on. The question is, can we understand what we're seeing in that signal? For instance, right now, silver is absolutely radical. It's always been gold's insane little sibling, but because but but there's a lot of signal in there. Silver has been China's gold actually for I don't know how long since recorded history, and China has always been deeply involved in gold, and it is now, right? I mean, I'm sorry, gold too, but also silver specifically, and actually in Japanese and in Korean and in Mandarin, bank is silver house. I mean, they call it silver house. That's what it actually is in their languages, right? It's not gold house, it's silver house, right? So I mean, it's deeply ingrained in the cultures, but actually the Japanese, it's been brainwashed out of their culture since World War II to get Japanese to save in fiat, just the same as we've been brainwashed. When I was a child, my father taught me how to balance a savings account. Like we went to the bank, opened a savings account. I don't know, it was probably was probably 10 or something. And he was showing me how to balance it. I remember doing it. And I had that savings book for years. It's possible I might still have it, but he, taught me how to write the interest down. You got, 18 cents in interest or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he was teaching me the virtues of saving. Now, what I didn't realize until much later is that of course he had been taught to save in fiat, but that was actually a trap to save in fiat, because, they're inflating they're printing billions of dollars. There was just another announcement to inject more liquidity into the system, right? Basically. And so the billions of dollars. So you're going to see the prices, Cantillon effect won't last long. And so what I'm getting to is we've been brainwashed away from saving in things that are real, that really stand the test of time, like gold and silver. But I watch that closely, not because I'm advertising for people to buy gold and silver, because notice I'm not mentioning anybody's names on where to get it from. I'm watching it as this is where the Indian puts his ear to the ground and can hear the horses far away, right? Last of the Mohican stuff, or put your ear to the train tracks. I mean, there's signal that comes through that. And I don't mean this in some esoteric way. I mean, but there you can see with the flows of silver. China just strangled down on exports of silver yesterday, January 1st, right? Okay. And so this is all part of the signal. There's silver problems now. There's a fight, routes and resources. There's a big fight over silver right now. Silver is an industrial metal, unlike gold is somewhat of an industrial metal, but mostly it's for savings, right? Gold is mostly just actually a store of wealth, used as a store of wealth, because we've agreed culturally, over thousands of years that gold is money, right? And so, and it's just a psychological agreement. That's all it is. We could agree that acorns are too, but they don't work as well. But and for various reasons, you can just plant more oak trees, right? But what I'm getting to is, on what things people can do is I would actually study things like silver and gold. I would study it. And when I say study it, I don't mean watch the stock market. I mean, read history books on gold and silver and start to study the history of it. And then you're going to start to get a different feel for it. It looks differently. It'll look differently to you when you start to study the history of it and how it's playing out now, which is basically the same. All right. And it's quite fascinating. The more that you study history, the more interesting it becomes. And the more it really does, obviously, repeat itself. It echoes very loudly.
So what are people going to see, Michael, when they study the history of gold and silver? I mean, what is the history that because I'm confident most people who listen, first of all, the majority, it's like you said, of U.S. citizens have been taught to save and spend in fiat. And since the Great Awakening started in 2020, we're all learning more about, gold, silver, fiat's bad. The Federal Reserve System is not the government. We're learning all these things. But I know that probably the majority of people listening don't understand the history of silver and how that's playing out today as history repeats itself. So since you do have your ear on the train tracks, what do you see historically, and what do you see coming with the silver?
Watch. I'm guessing that the silver prices are going to go up for various reasons. Some of it's quite obvious. For instance, in the U.S., they're just printing money by the tens of billions of dollars. So that's going to, that raises the prices of all boats, right? And so, but also you can see that the global system is splitting at a minimum in half, or let's say in two parts. Let's say, I don't know if it'll be two halves, but for instance, you can see the Shanghai silver prices are very different than what you see at the COMEX, right? It's very, very different. There's clearly, and of course, physicals and physical. I don't even talk about futures and all that. Leave that to the traders. I'm not traitors, but traders, right? Yeah. And I'm watching physical, because physical is where the action is, where the real signal's at. There's signal in futures too, but I'm more watching physical. Yeah. And you can see that physical silver obviously is very important in things like these AI centers. It's very important in in computer systems and that we're on right now. Very important in all sorts of things, like these AI centers, of course, and solar panels. It goes on and on and on and on. And and China needs that silver, and so do we, right? We all want it, we all need it, but the U.S. side has suppressed silver prices for generations now, and that suppression is built up like a volcano, and they are losing control over it. Possibly have actually just completely lost control over it. Actually, as the system clearly splits in at least two parts, they will have lost control, because arbitrage will take up. We'll find a way through. I mean, money will find, whether that be in the form of silver or gold, it will find its way to a happier house, right? Speaking of which, if I wish we had like 8 hours, because there's so many things I would love to talk about. But the place that I'm sitting at now, Netherlands, this used to be one of the richest places on earth. Amsterdam was the richest city on earth. I'm not in Amsterdam. Yeah, I'm not in Amsterdam now, but that's where that church burned yesterday. But I'm in a place called Stavoren, which is an old port, actually. It's a very old medieval port, actually. But in any case, Amsterdam used to be the richest city on earth. Why? Because of global trade, right? And the guilder was the first global currency, actually, right? And so the Dutch guilder, it was the first global, you might say, reserve currency. But how did Netherlands finally? Actually, let's rewind the tapes a little bit, and then we'll get to silver. In 1415, the Portuguese sailed out of Portugal, and they attacked a place called Ceuta, and that's in present day Morocco. I've been there, right? And Ceuta is still part of the EU, even though it's in Africa. Ceuta is a city, and so the Portuguese attacked there in 1415 after they had busted a lot of the Spaniards and the Portuguese had busted a lot of the Muslims out of the Iberian Peninsula. Anyway, so they were free to expand themselves. Boom. So you might arguably say that was the beginning of the globalism that we see today. Arguably. I mean, you could set the beginning anywhere you want, but let's say, for argument's sake, that's where it started to go big time maritime, right? Like long distance. So the Portuguese, at that point, for instance, with Prince Henry the Navigator and whatnot, they started learning how to navigate better, make better maps, better ships, that sort of thing. And the Portuguese had the run of the mill. They were the first big global maritime gangsters, you might say, because they were going for the gold and silver, right? Especially gold at that time. And so so they had a run of the mill there until Columbus set sail in 1492. We all know that's when he set over the ocean blue from Spain. Right. And the next thing you know, discovered the Americas, discovered Panama in 1502-ish for Panama. And, because he did several missions. But that was when the Pope got involved. Pope Alexander, the sixth Pope, he got involved with. He's like, the Portuguese and the Spaniards, they are neighbors on the Iberian Peninsula, and they're both Catholic, and they're going to end up fighting each other. Now, the next level of the globalist was obviously the Vatican. And so the Vatican didn't want the Spaniards and the Portuguese fighting each other. So they made a treaty. And this treaty in 1494 split the world in two, right? And that's why today Brazil speaks Portuguese, because Brazil was on the Portuguese side, right? And Portugal started bringing black slaves over from Africa. That's why you have a lot of blacks there that speak Portuguese, right? So this thing from 1494, was important, and that's why on the other side of that line, they're mostly speaking Spanish, right? And so then about 30 years later, as more of the world became discovered as the Spanish and the Portuguese, at this point, they more or less were doing the big time globalism themselves. That's when, they started to realize more about what's going on in Asia. Of course, keep in mind when Columbus came over to the Americas, he thought Cuba was Japan. So he was slightly off, right? Of course, you look at the old maps back then, the Americas were not even on the maps, right? So now we get to about 30 years later, the Treaty of Tordesillas. You see another treaty that the Pope then intervened and said, okay, on this side of this line, the Spanish own, like, for instance, Philippines. The Portuguese will have Japan and some other parts. Of course, the Portuguese didn't do too well in Japan because the Portuguese were, the Japanese started calling them Nanban, which means Southern Barbarian, which was a term that also went for Spaniards as well. And the Chinese called them similar. And actually, the reason that the Philippines today is called the Philippines is because it was named after, King Philip II, right? And so, but skipping past all that, as time unfolds, now you get to have other players get involved. Now, keep in mind, in the 1500s, when the Spaniards were down in Panama, where I spend so much time, they realized this was a path to the South Seas, because Panama, you could get to the Pacific Ocean through Panama. And so in the early 1500s, the Spaniards were down in Panama, and they were destroying the Indians down there. The Indians I'm still down there with a lot. They still don't like the Spanish. And this is the last time I was with them was earlier in 2025. I'm out with them all the time. And I'm out with Kuna and Imbra Indians all the time. There's Wunan Indians down there too, but I don't go out with them as much. But the Indians that the Spaniards they wanted their gold. And the Spaniards were torturing the Indians. They were killing them off. They were raiding them at night, knocking them. And one of the Indian leaders said, if you want this stuff, this gold so much, you should go to this other place. I think he said 7 suns away or whatever. It was Peru, right? So this is really important today. Super important right now on January 2nd, 2026. Peru, right?
Yeah.
Spanish go down. They assembled their army in Darien, Panama, right? That it's called, the Darien Isthmus at that time, right? Yeah. So they assembled their army. They go down to Peru, and they find a lot of silver, right? A lot, right? They found Cerro Rico, the rich mountain, which was a mountain of silver, basically, and still is, right? And so the Spanish started pulling out that silver, and they would say later, you could walk to Spain on the trail of silver from Peru, and you could walk back on the trail of the bones of the people that died mining it, right? But the Chinese also were globalists, believe it or not. They haven't always been, by the time we were born, China was in shambles, right? But there was a time when China was big boys, and they are again, right? But in China, they didn't want European products. They didn't want things from Europe. They didn't want much of anything except silver. They wanted silver. And so the Spanish were trading in silver with the Chinese and places like Manila, Philippines, and whatnot. They wanted that silver. And so the next thing you know, Empire of Silver, China, and even today, silver is deeply ingrained in the Chinese culture. That some Chinese will say silver is our gold. Remember, bank in Mandarin is silver house, right? And in Japanese, it's silver house. Korean, silver house, right? Silver. So actually, one of Masako, we have a library, our private library in Japan. I've got one book from the 1700s. It's an English man talking about trade through the Caspian route and whatnot, which is still a big fight today. And he's talking about all this tea that's flowing over the overland route back to England, and how the silver's flowing one way and the tea's flowing another. And he's like, this tea is very addictive. And, it is mildly addictive, actually. And so the tea, it's not like opium, but it's mildly addictive, actually. And so the tea is flowing one way and the silver's flowing the other way. And this English author who studies that trade route, he's like, we're being drained of silver that's going back to China in exchange for this very dangerous tea. He's talking about how the tea is, very dangerous for people's health and whatnot. Because he's really, he realizes this is draining. At that point, it had become the United Kingdom, actually. But because United Kingdom was formed in 1707, right? With the treaty. But anyway, and that because the Scots went bankrupt in Darien, actually, they got absorbed into the United Kingdom. But anyway, but the that's a whole different story, the Darien scheme. But what I'm getting to is this patterns that we're seeing now: silver flowing this way, gold flying that way, and nobody could. There was China didn't want anything but silver. They would export Chinaware, they would export silverware, they would export all kinds of stuff, tea, but they didn't, and even opium too. but they didn't want not even opium. They've always been involved in the drug trade. But then, at some point, the British are like, well, how can we get some of our silver back? They started doing opium the other direction, right? So then you have the opium wars, and this is all fascinating. We could talk for literally days about this, but what I'm getting to is these things that we're seeing today. If you want to have a better idea and have your feet on the ground about what's coming, the study of history is absolutely invaluable. I mean, it is itself silver and gold, the study of history, because like, for instance, right now, if China wants that, they want that silver. They need that silver. They need it for their industry. We need it. Everybody that has any serious industry that needs that silver, and the prices are set to explode. Actually, last year in 2025, how much did they go up? How much was it? I don't even remember. It was well over 100%. I should know because I bought it back when it was cheap, and but I'm not actually tracking every percent that it goes up, but it was significant. And it's going, I think it's going to go up a lot more. But again, it's nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything I'm talking about, somebody could have said 100 years ago and did. I read a lot of old books. It's not like they could have said it 100 years ago. I'm basically just saying stuff that people used to say, but we're doing it through computer systems now. But it's the same stuff that people said 100 years ago is still unfolding.
I think that is astounding. And I love the lesson for today, Michael. If people, and I'm not a financial advisor, but just from all the signs, if people are like how your dad raised you, which was how he was raised, and it was honorable, but just misinformed. So saving fiat currency in a bank is not a safe thing to do. And people,
it's a trap.
It is a trap. It is a trap. And it's my understanding too that a few years ago, a law was passed that if the banks go under, they can seize all of the savings and keep it as their own. I believe that was a law that was passed. But regardless, people need assets, not paper. It's like monopoly money, actually. It's just we haven't been informed of that. Whereas actual assets, silver and gold, are something that people can actually save and earn phenomenal money on moving forward. And I don't represent a silver or gold company either. I've just been watching things that happen, and now you're supporting that major.
Right. And the banks can seize your money because as soon as you give it to them, it's not your money anymore. It's just not your money, period. Right. And and what's really interesting is it's not even money. It's currency. It's just fiat. It's just IOUs. It's not your IOUs anymore. That's a more accurate way of putting it. And it's just not. And interestingly, why do they even need to seize it? They could just print more, and they do, right? Every day. Right? It's a way of taking our liquidity and locking us down, right? In other words, taking our liquidity out of our hands. But they can just print. They don't need to charge income taxes to Americans. Why do you need to do that when you can just print more money, right? I mean, actually, a lot of people have asked this for many, many years, and rightfully so, right? Like, look at G. Edward Griffin is an amazing man. Catherine and Misako and I, my wife, Catherine and Misako, or Catherine Austin Fitz and Misako and I were sitting at a table a couple of weeks ago before Christmas, and we were talking about G. Edward Griffin, who is the author of, The Creature from Jekyll Island, which everybody should read. Everybody should read that. And it was actually
on the show a couple of months ago. I think people can go back through and look at the Patriot Prayer Network and see an interview with him. He is brilliant, and he's writing his next book. I think he's in his 90s, and he is absolutely brilliant.
We called him up just before Christmas, and
okay,
we were sitting at the table talking about him. I said, well, let's just call him up, because I called him up because he's, I call him something, and and we're talking. He talked about he's doing another book, and actually I told him I'm going to fly out and see him because he has changed the way a lot of people view the fiat system, because he laid it out so wisely. And it's a book. Actually, I didn't read the book until a few years ago. And it was Anthony Rubin that suggested that I read it. Now, I knew obviously about money printing and that sort of thing, but I didn't realize the actual history of how we actually got the Fed and that sort of thing. and how these, it's all quite fascinating. Keep in mind, Catherine Austin Fitts comes from that world. She's extremely knowledgeable in that world. And the reason she asked Masako and I to come over is because to Netherlands, we were in Japan, is because we studied another part of it, and she wants to know about that part, and we want to know more about the parts, because this is a collective. It takes years of study, so it's really important to develop your human networks. Really, it's super important, because I can't spend all of my life studying monetary policy and war. So I've spent a lot of time studying monetary policy and the fiscal policy, and I've spent a lot of time doing it, but I'm never going to be an expert. I need to have enough knowledge that I can incorporate that into my larger schema of how things work, right? So that I can be, if your paradigm is accurate, the way you look at the world is accurate, and your input information is accurate, then you should be able to predict things a lot better than the so-called experts. Now, keep in mind, there's a lot of noise in the system. You're going to get some things wrong. But anytime you feel the emotion of surprise, like, well, I didn't expect they would do that, that means, okay, you need to stop and go, why did I feel surprised? That means either my input information is way off, or the way I'm looking at things is way off, or both, right? So you should never get married to your ideas, right? And you should only use these working ideas as long as they work for you. And if they don't work for you, you either have to keep tweaking them or just throw it out and start again, right? Until you have a way of looking at the world that actually produces advanced answers. For instance, Masako and I, we were down in Panama, and years ago, we got information about these things called screwworms, which are flesh-eating larvae of a type of a fly. So we were in a private meeting with just Masako and I and one other person, and he told us about the screwworms. And these screwworms have cost the United States billions of dollars over the years. And the screwworms, there was a big screwworm program to eradicate those out of the United States several generations ago, and it worked. And so billions of male screwworm flies were irradiated because the females only mate once in their life. And if they don't produce offspring, from that one mating moment, then they never produce offspring, and the replication number goes below 1, the population collapses. So billions of these irradiated male flies were released in key places. They were pushed down out of Texas, out of parts of America, through Texas, down through Mexico, down through Guatemala, Belize, all that, all the way down. And the front line is the Darien Gap. So the United States has a program down there that still irradiates billions of flies and releases them by aircraft and pickup trucks and everything else in key places. Now, as soon as Masako and I heard about the screwworms, which we were unaware of until about, 4 years ago or so, but we were in this meeting, and he talked about the screwworms, and I said, oh, we need to reach out to that facility, because in our paradigm, those screwworms will end up back in the United States intentionally, right? So we immediately reached out to the people, the U.S. Organization down there that releases the screwworms, and by their responses on email and whatnot, I'm like, they're going to be part of it. They're coming back to the United States. I published it immediately, and I published it saying, I'm publishing it based on my many years of being accurate on things like this. Here's their response. They won't let us tour the facility. Now, I told some others, they're like, no, you don't understand how the government stuff works. I'm like, oh, actually I do, right? Because I deal with governments all over the world all the time, right? And when you get a response like that, that's a cover-up, right? And I'm like, I know what cover-up looks like. That's a cover-up. So I started publishing it, and I published it over and over and over. And I told millions of people on many interviews, we're going to probably end up with screwworms back in America. And now we do, right? They're back, right? And how did we know that? Because our paradigm is accurate. But we picked that up on one little piece of information about the screwworm program down there, reached out to them, their response, I'm like, that's it. It's game on. They're going to use this. We predicted Nord Stream. We predicted Nord Stream would be cut well in advance. Masako and I were in Germany at BASF plant in Ludwigshafen, Germany, 14 days before Nord Stream got blown up. We were there asking what's going to happen to BASF if something happens to Nord Stream. I was publishing this. This isn't, Monday Morning Football and telling you what happened post facto. Oh no, we were saying it many, many times in front of millions of people, saying we think Nord Stream and we think Groningen gas field, which was then closed as well, which is the biggest gas field in Europe, which is not far from us. We predicted these things because our paradigm is very working. It's a working paradigm. It's actually it's producing serious results if your input information is sufficiently 24 karat and getting rid of the mud, which means not paying attention to any MSM. We don't have time for it. It's a waste of time. It's a distraction. It keeps you out of where the gold is, actually, because if you're trying to sort out between, okay, that's a lie, that's not a lie, you're not where the gold is. The gold is where that stuff happens. That's why we go to all these places. When I say gold, I mean golden information, right?
Right.
So when we go to these places like Taiwan, when we go to places like Thailand, when we go to these different Panama, we spent about a year in Panama since Biden was installed.
Yeah.
We predict this Chinese memorial that just got torn down, right?
Yes.
You know who did that? That was our team, right? We didn't physically do it, but we took down there our Burning Edge team with Masako, my wife, and Vandersteel. We took Ann and Masako and I, we took down Chris Martinson. We took down Brett Weinstein. We took Epoch Times. We took congressmen. We took 50, 60 or 70 people or so. Let's say 60. It was a lot of people, right? And
wow.
we put it on the map, right? We put it on the map and we kept prodding certain people in Panama. Look, this thing's got to go, right? And they just tore it down. And now the Chinese are very upset. The foreign minister is issuing statements. The president of Panama is involved. We didn't predict that in advance. We kind of, we did more than that. And likewise with Colony Ridge in Texas, that was our Burning Edge team that put that on the map. We picked up that information from actually Todd Bensman. I picked it up because I know Todd, and he talked about Colony Ridge in the back of his book, one of his books he works with Tom Homan now. And Todd Bensman is quite knowledgeable in the border. And Todd took me down to Colony Ridge and showed me what's going on, hoping that I would put it on the map and make it controversial. And I did. From there, we took our Burning Edge team down to SpaceX. And we spent a lot of time at SpaceX in Texas because it's right on the Mexican border. And we were focusing how aliens were coming across from Mexico onto SpaceX property while aliens are preparing to go to Mars from the same property, right? So then you saw Elon Musk get involved in the border stuff, right? We never even asked to talk with anybody at SpaceX. We never messaged Elon Musk, never asked to talk with him. We just did the Chinese water drip torture, and then we moved to the next. This works the way that, we see what's going on. We're not just reporting. I'm not a reporter. We do stuff, right? I mean, we affect things. We affect big things, many of which will never see the light of the day, but some do, like the Chinese memorial down in Panama. Hey, that was Burning Edge, and straight up, the reason that the Darien Gap flows got closed, that was our team, Burning Edge. We developed the platform that Molino, the current president of Panama, would end up running for president on, right? We never talked with him. We never said, here's the policy. We just did certain things. I've been doing this for years. You can affect things if you do things, if you study hard, really study hard, and you know what you're talking about so that the big boys listen to you, right?
Right.
It's amazing what you can do. And especially if your target audience is just one person, but that person is key. It looks like your target audience is millions, but often it's just one person. Often it's just one person or some small team, but we're putting it out to the public. It is to the public, but it's very targeted, and we make sure that person sees it. Very effective, right? So you see China is clearly trying to take Panama. There's a big fight over in of course the Middle East for the Suez Canal, Red Sea, of course, Strait of Hormuz. I mean, this is big stuff, right? So it's the same old stuff that's been going on since long before the Romans, and it's still going on today.
Michael, you've done so much. How do you choose? How do you pick and choose what you're going to focus on and where you're going to go? Because there are problems and hotspots everywhere. How Like, what made you recently take the team to Panama? Why of all the places in the world and all the problems? Because I like my audience to get informed about practical steps and people who actually take action as opposed to just sit and listen to shows all the time or watch TV or something. Because the people who listen to me, they want action steps, they want plans. So how did you pick where, and we'll take Panama. How did you pick to go there and start influencing? How does this work?
Your best advisor, everybody watching this, your best advisor is going to be a well-informed, well-rested, no intoxicants, lots of sunshine, intuition. Your intuition is going to be your best advisor. My best advisor is my intuition. It's years of study, years of going into wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Nepal, and Philippines, all these different places, right? So many things I've seen, physically seen, key places, key people, reading tons and tons of books. I read an amazing amount of books and stuff, right? But making sure that the stuff that you read, you don't waste time. You don't waste time on if you're going to be a professional athlete, obviously you're not going to be eating Doritos all day. You're going to have to do professional athlete stuff. Likewise, when it comes to predictions, you need to stick to a diet of serious research, right? You have to go play. You have to physically go. You have to combine. If you want to do it at a high level, a very high level, you need to study history as much as you can, and then go places. Actually, it's good to read books before you go, while you're there, and after you leave, right? And over time, you start to see a different way of looking at things. I tell young people all the time, to travel to at least 5 countries, go to at least 5 other countries, and when you go home, you're going to look at your country. And I don't mean go for some package tour in Acapulco or something, right? I mean really go. And I don't mean go for a week. I mean go, right? Like go for a couple of years. Like go walk to Mount Everest, go things like, you don't have to go to the top, just go to base camp. I did that a couple of times, just go walk around. You'll learn a lot by just walking, by the way. And that's important. No intoxicants whatsoever, right? That includes alcohol, that includes none, right? And certainly none of these drugs are washing over the streets. When you go, everybody watching this, when you go for long walks and you get good sleep and you just walk alone, no earphones, no music, don't have time for that, right? I mean, good music's great. Sometimes, obviously, it's a medicine if it's good music, but go for a walk and just be quiet, right? And you're going to start to assemble things that are already in your mind, because you're a lot smarter than you think you are. There's a lot of unpacked boxes in your mind, and you have a lot of things that you've learned, but you don't have time to put them together because you're busy with stuff. You know what I mean? There's always stuff going on in all of our lives, right? The roof's leaking. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of stuff, and you have to. So, but if you go for these long walks, and you can do it every day, just even 30 minutes or an hour, just go for thinking. Don't listen to anything. Just go, and not on busy streets. Go where it's quiet. You can't be dodging cars and potholes and waiting for the light to change and all this stuff, because then your mind is in a different mode. You have to be on the lookout for stuff. But if you go out to quiet places and walk, you're going to start to see the world very differently. You make that just part of your normal habits, right? And you'll start to assemble knowledge that's already in your head, and start and listen to your intuition. If your intuition is wrong, you say, hey, knock, knock, something was wrong with my intuition. I need to keep informing it. You have to feed your intuition with knowledge and experience. And actually, so ways to learn. Reading is very good, but using your greatest discernment on what you read. And we don't have time to waste time. And another is going places and doing things, right? Go out with farmers, like spend time with fishermen, and that's or maybe you already are one, but go out and, I was in the Army for a while. I've done a lot of stuff, right? So doing things is extremely helpful. And then once you've done that for a while, where you learn a lot is weirdly by teaching. So when you start to actually reach a level where you're like, I can teach some of this stuff. I've reached the level that I'm, I actually have a lot more knowledge on this particular topic than most people, and they might find benefit. When you start to teach it, then you start to realize, because the people that you're teaching will start to find holes in your knowledge, right? And you'll find holes in your knowledge, and then you start to plug those. Every teacher that's taught for a long time will tell you, you learn a lot by teaching, because your students will certainly help you out.
Sure.
They're going to find the holes in your knowledge that you never knew were there, right?
Yeah.
So these different components, and you do this over the years, and before you know it, your predictions will be a lot more accurate than the average Joe, and certainly all that trash that we see on MSM. You'll start to see. But remember, your greatest advisor is going to be your intuition. When you go, hey, I don't know anything about medicine because I'm not a doctor, but do I trust that guy in the white coat? Because my intuition can read people quite well, right? I mean, that's one of the ways. That's how a lot of my predictions are based on going through. Like, let's say I'm in a different field. I don't know anything about this field. So I've got to read the people that are in the field and go, who should I listen to? I mean, okay, I don't trust that guy because this, that, or the other. And okay, this guy, this woman, she seems, her thinking processes look good. I mean, the first thing I'm auditing is, are their thinking processes clear? Do they have a logical thinking process? Or are they just making stuff up out of thin air, and they don't have a good, let's say, thinking hygiene? Then if they don't have good thinking processes, then nothing you put into the machines are going to come out accurate. It doesn't matter how good the information is. It's going to come out mud, right? So I'm looking for thinking processes that are sensible, like, first principles. What do you know that you know, right? I don't actually know how gravity works, but I know in my experience, if I drop this, it'll fall. Okay. I'll call that a first principle. There's something that's working that makes that fall, right? So, that's a first principle, right? But or at least for working idea, for working problems anyway, it's a first principle. But what I'm getting to is your ability to read people is important. It's a very important skill, because you have to be able, because most of the topics we don't know much about. There's an effect called the Gell-Mann effect from this physicist, right? And he noticed that when he would be reading a newspaper and read something about physics, and it would always be off, right? He's like, and they're off again. Then he turns to the next page, and he's reading about foreign affairs or whatever, and he just takes it at face value, like, wow, the thing going off in Somaliland or whatever. Yeah. Well, then you're not adhering to first principles anymore. You've just audited the newspaper and realized on page 1 the physics part was wrong. You turn the page though, and you automatically start to, because you don't know anything about Somaliland, you're like, well, this must be true. You know what I mean? But in reality, so as a matter of thinking hygiene, you have to go, well, when this newspaper is wrong, I can't trust the rest of the news. I'm out. I need to find other sources, right? Or at least I have to be very cautious with this source. And so, you're grading your sources, right? In the intelligence world, the people that know that sort of stuff, how you grade sources, A1 to F6 and all that stuff, right? And so what I'm getting to is your ability to read people and do it, and with a good degree of accuracy is a basic survival skill. So, and you can always get better at that, right? And, so you have to listen to your intuition when it comes to people, right? So that's what, when I enter into a new world, I'm reading the people more than I'm reading. Of course, I'm reading books and that sort of thing, but I'm reading the people that have been in that space for many years. And I'm trying to figure out who I should listen to, whose intuition should I be listening to? Because, like, for instance, in the silver world, I'm watching silver very closely because you're clearly picking up signals about, when you see silver going wild, it's often an indicator something big's about to happen, right? And silver's going wild right now. Yeah. And so I'm listening to people that are in the silver space and have been in that space for most of their life, and I'm trying to sort out who I should listen to, and so that I can, more predict and incorporate that into my paradigm.
That's wonderful advice. I love everything that you say. It gives people actionable steps that they can take to do things with their own boots on the ground in their own areas and impact things that are important to them. And I do believe people should be prepared and not surprised. And so I want to pivot to the Darien Gap. You have done extensive work in the Darien Gap over the years, spent a lot of time there. And so I would love to know directly from you about the border invasion that came through the Darien Gap, and how did we get to where we are today with this invasion in the United States of, I get back to people from Somalia. We're finding all this corruption in several states, just as one nation, for example. But walk us through what made you go to the Darien Gap? What were your thought processes? Did your intuition guide you there? What you started finding out and how it got us to where we are today?
Well, Masako and I, we were in Washington during when Biden was inaugurated and all that stuff. And we went immediately down to the El Paso in Texas, realizing that we thought that if our paradigm was accurate and the input information was accurate, input information included Biden was now president. So there's a pretty big input there that everybody can see. And as a first principle, yes, he was installed into office, or at least his likeness was. And so, but we went down to El Paso thinking, we went with Chuck Holton, and we went there thinking that, hey, there's a high chance they're going to start flooding across the border. And boom, they did right then. Then we went down to Colombia together. We went down to Colombia thinking that they may use the Darien Gap, from Colombia into Panama as a main invasion route. And they immediately started really coming through. So then I personally spent about a year between Darien and the rest of Panama, looking at Panama Canal and that sort of thing, and studying, that. And keep in mind, and then, Masako would come and go quite a lot. She's been there, I don't know, a dozen or 15 times. And we would take people down, congressmen, Epoch Times, the whole works, right? We were taking, Ann Vandersteel's been down there many times. Oscar Blue went through the Darien Gap. We were just taking, a lot of people. And so over time, Anthony Rubin, just a lot. We learned more and more about how that flows. Now, keep in mind, Panama has been extremely important for about 500 years. Columbus found it in 1502, if my memory is accurate, but let's say in that time frame. And then shortly after that, next thing you know, the Indians are saying, go to Peru. That's where the other metals are, right? And but Panama, ever since that time, has been a very serious place of war. I mean, Panama, it was called the Darien Isthmus, actually, right? And it was all Indians, and then the Spaniards came, and one thing led to another. Empires came and went. The Scottish went down there in the 1690s, tried to make a path between the seas to the Pacific from the Atlantic side. They went bankrupt, and then they ended up being absorbed in the Articles of Union in 1706 and finally 1707. And that's when the United Kingdom was born, due to the Scottish failure in the Darien, actually. And so then the French, of course, came, and for centuries, people thought we could make a canal or a railway or whatever. Finally, a railway was made. It became the most profitable railway in the world for a while, actually. And I mean, Masako and I have a whole library that are old books and unbelievable numbers of old maps from the old days, and where the gold is and where the train's being built and all this stuff. But anyway, finally the train gets built, and finally the French try to build a canal. But the yellow fever and malaria and just the terrible mud and everything else, and a bad plan, actually. They thought they could build it like they did the Suez. The Suez was a difficult canal to build. There's no question about it. It was a piece of national pride for the French. But then but the Suez, it was very difficult. But compared to the Panama Canal, it was not that difficult. Panama Canal was a much more difficult. And even though it was shorter. And so the French went bankrupt. And then the United States came through and said, we can do it. And, a lot of people thought, well, America's going to fail, but actually we did. And keep in mind, during the 1800s, the United States built about more than 4,000 miles of canals within the United States. I mean, the United States wasn't too shabby at building canals and railroads. I mean, Americans knew how to build stuff, and they were doing it, and so did the Dutch. Others did as well. But what I'm getting to is the United States succeeded, And right about the time the Panama Canal opens, 1914, that's when, G. Edward Griffin describes also the Fed, right? All these sorts of things in World War One then kicks off and that sort of thing. So, I mean, this is all related. World War One, the Fed, and all these things. These are not separate things. It takes a lot of study, but eventually you're like, oh, these are clearly connected. Like World War One and World War Two, those aren't even separate. That's the same war. Actually, when you really have studied these things a lot, it's amazingly obvious, actually, that World War One and World War Two are the same war. The war we're in now is the same war. It's the Catherine Austin Fitts totally gets it. I mean, she talks about stuff like this. She, one time I was watching one of her interviews back when, because one of the things I've been saying is the people that are doing these things, they've been doing this for centuries. It's a hardcore game plan, moving populations around and that sort of thing. Somaliland, whatever. This is an old game plan. And Catherine said, one of her interviews, she said, we're talking about people who plan in centuries. And I said, bingo, she knows what she's talking about. She's like, you can't understand this by, what happened. You can know everything in the world that happened in the last 10 years. You're never going to do that. But let's imagine, she didn't say this, but in essence, but in reality, the game plan that's unfolding is very old. It's like trying to understand the jungle with a snapshot. You're just not going to, right? But how did it get there? How did it grow? Who's doing it? Everybody that's in office now, whether it's Netanyahu or Trump or the boy Zelensky or all these different people, those are just leaves on the tree. They're nothings. They are absolutely nothings on the scale of things. Nobody in office in any country right now is an anything compared to the larger structures that are very powerful. And if you don't understand how these flows work, you're never going to get things right. When people say, well, if we just had a better president, if you had a better president, he'd still be in the same pipeline, right? You have to, if you want to predict things that, and so that you can take action steps and have a better idea how you should position yourself and your family and your friends and the things that you study, you have to look at things in a long timeline horizon, because the weather didn't start at the beach, right? The hurricane didn't start at the beach, and the hurricane is not the only hurricane, right? And what I'm getting to is we're looking at processes that have been going on just look at the Bible. I mean, seriously, it's like, it's the same stuff. It's just got bigger ships now. And we got canals and airplanes and satellites, and we have phones, but it's the same stuff. The alligators still do alligator stuff. The crocodiles still do crocodile stuff. And you can be very predictive as long as you are willing to accept anything that you can prove, that you can objectively prove, right? And then assemble that over time, keep feeding your intuition, get it good sleep, zero intoxicants, no wasted time on crap music, and all this stuff. Good music, different story. But, going for long walks, thinking in quiet places, go to quiet places, think things through. And then your intuition is going to start knocking on the door and telling you things. And it's going to be more and more accurate. How you read people, how you read events, what you should listen to, what you should throw out the window. Again, feed your intuition and get it good rest.
So, Michael, walk me through then, for example, I find this fascinating. Panama, the Fed, World War I, World War II, all connected. Personally, I have never done that before. So how are they like all connected in one and the same? Can you explain that a bit more?
Right. It's routes and resources and ideology, right? And if you look at the main flows that are going on, they're still the main flows, right? For instance, there will be fight, when people are like, well, how did you know that Panama was going to be, blow up like this? I'm like, because, this is where floods happen. There was a flood here before. There's the high water mark. There shall be a flood again. And this is a major route through the world. Panama is a major route. There is no chance on earth that Panama lives in peace and harmony and nobody fights for it. It's just not going to happen with Suez Canal. It's not going to happen with Bab el-Mandeb or Strait of Hormuz or Strait of Gibraltar. None of these places, right? It's not going to happen because people fight over routes and resources. They just do. And so the more that you understand about these things and how these processes work and where the routes and resources are and the ideologies that conflict and fight with each other, and keep in mind the ideologies when you boil everything off and you look at what is underneath, it's mostly what's left is routes and resources. And one of those resources is human resources. King Philip II from Spain, what was he trying to do fighting the Protestants here and where I'm at now? I mean, Spain was attacking all over the world because the King Philip II wanted everybody to be Catholic, because he wanted them to be, remember, the sixth Pope, Alexander, he did that treaty between Portugal and Spain in 1494 to keep the Spanish and the Portuguese from fighting each other, because he wanted the world to be Catholic, right? And
Right.
so, when later on, much later on, when the Protestants started to split off, now you got this huge war between Protestants. You go up to Belfast today in Ireland, and there's a huge wall separating white people, Irish people from white people, Irish people, because one is Protestant and the other is Catholic. I mean, that's Sunni and Shia stuff. That's routes and that's about resources, the human resources that, the Protestants split off. That would be my group and split off. And, my family ended up being shipwrecked in Bermuda in 1609. They were with the Virginia Company on the way to Jamestown, right? They got shipwrecked. They were shipwrecked there for 10 months in a ship called the Sea Venture. There's a lot of books about it. And, and Shakespeare ended up doing a play called The Tempest, and it's about that mission actually. And that was all about routes and resources, right? And many types of resources. And keep in mind, the resources that people are going for are different on different levels. Like for instance, many of the people that went to the Americas, say to North America, they were actually going because they could get protein. They could hunt in the forest. They could get all the deer they wanted. They could hunt bears and eat them, right? Back in in Europe, I mean, hunting in England, you get death sentence for doing things like that. So a lot of people, so on that level, the resource was, I can eat, and on another level though, it was about, globalism, right? So globalism is nothing new. We talk about globalism as if it started yesterday. There's nothing, look in the Bible. I mean, there's zero new about globalism. But so when I'm talking about context and you look at these wars, the bankers' wars you hear about, you'll hear all wars are about banking. Not really, but those are a huge component, absolutely massive component. And you'll hear people say all the wars are about oil. No, they're not. There was huge wars before oil. Oil is just another resource people fight. They used to fight over whale oil, right? They used to fight over tobacco. They used to fight over all kinds of things. It's routes and resources. What is that resource? Well, whatever the biggest resource is in the world where there's a huge arbitrage, there's going to be a war, right? So whatever, put, R in your equation, resources, and there's a lot of R's in there, right? People are going to fight over those resources if they're valuable enough and if they're in short supply, right? And then they're going to fight over the routes to get them from here to there, right? And so routes, resources, and ideology. So the more that you recognize those are your main factors right there, that's it. Like Somaliland, when people bring up Somaliland and they ask me, and I'm like, what's going to be routes and resources? Look up where Somaliland is. Boom, right there. Exactly the place you would want to control, right there, right? And Panama Canal, again, people are saying, how did you know Panama was going to act up? I'm like, how did I know this bottle cap was going to fall? So, it's like, it's not huge intelligence. It's not brilliance at all. It's literally because that's how it works. It's that simple. That's just how it works,
Yeah. That's astounding. So moving populations, you talked about how, Catherine, you've been talking about, they planned all of this for centuries, and the moving populations, that is a concern with so many people right now worldwide, are these moving populations. You're in the Darien Gap watching populations move into the United States that are still here for the most part. So talk to me about this. What is going on with this moving populations? What is the game plan? What are we watching unfold? And most importantly, how can we stop it and turn it around? Because this is not good. There are people in, for example, the United States right now who do not remotely belong here. I was just reading on one of my social media sites that some town in, I think it was Minnesota, it could be Michigan. Anyway, the town council passed that Muslims could now sacrifice animals in their homes. You know, Michael, this is the United States of America. We have shelters for animals. We don't sacrifice them. And things are going wrong quickly.
Some fish don't mix well in the same aquarium. Demographic replanting is old game plan. This has been going on, again, biblical, but you go like the Romans. The Romans were very good at it, right? Again, for a lot of people, this is a new idea that the big players move demographies around. But look at my family. They came over with the Easons. They got shipwrecked on Bermuda, right? That was part of it, right? They were, or the Scots, like my culture is Scots-Irish, right? The Scots-Irish were formed when the English were using the Irish or using the Scots to fight the Irish. And then the Scots intermarried with Irish and they became this other thing, the Scots-Irish. So the Scots-Irish were actually born of that. And then the Scots-Irish were used later to go over to the Americas and fight Cherokee and all this. Then they married into the Cherokee. I mean, so I mean, this is an old game plan. I've got a book that I haven't read yet back in our library in Japan. And I found it, I don't know, some months ago, and I ordered it, and it came in right before we left. But but it's about how Bulgaria and Greece and Turkey were swapping parts of their populations. And it goes and it describes the legal mechanisms, the information war mechanisms. Like basically, you take these people, we'll take those people. They were actually swapping populations, right? Yeah, you take the goats, I'll take the chickens. You know, it's like they're moving them around. You got to keep in mind the big players look at this very, very differently than we do. Like for instance, yesterday, Masako and I did several hours of briefing and just a private briefing with us and a Dutchman. And we found, and he showed us 2 villages, one in Netherlands and one in Belgium, that are about to be uprooted. They're going to be uprooted to build port facilities, right? And so they're going; those villages will cease to exist, right? Now, and they'll be just erased off the maps. You know, this stuff is normal. Moving people around because there's gold underneath them, or oil, or pipeline needs to go through, or you just want the entire area, you know, because, wipe out the Apaches because there's stuff there, right? Or we want to build railroads across America. It's not just Americans. This stuff has happened long before the first current Americans ever stepped foot in America. It's just part of warfare, is rearranging the people, rearranging the farmland. That's how they look at it. When you look at how the kings and the emperors and whatnot operate, they're constantly just moving huge groups of people around, constantly. And that's what's happening now. If you don't want it to happen, you're not going to tweet your way out of this, right? You're not going to do that. You're going to have to actually stop it, man up and stop it. If you don't, your churches will be burned down and you'll be killed, right? It's that simple. You'll either be run off the land because they just keep flooding more people in. Remember, that's one of the main ways that we got America from the Indians was fire water, and just ships kept coming, and we were having a lot of babies, right? And then there was the rifles and the muskets and all that stuff, railroads. I mean, it was a long process. It took centuries, right? It took centuries. Actually, it's still ongoing, right? Like down in Panama and Guatemala, a lot of the places down in those are still indigenous people. Like you go to Guatemala and it's about half indigenous, right? I mean, it still is, but you see, we're building a huge embassy there in Guatemala City, right? It's amazing. And so you can see these processes are still underway all over the world, and they never end. There's no end in sight. But if you don't want it to happen to you, that's where you stand up. And if you don't stand up, you're just going to be moved around like the chickens and the hogs, right? That's the way this goes. And right now, for instance, the rewilding, some populations are being diminished by animals, right? Again, out of the Bible. I mean, for instance, you've got the wolves here in Netherlands. The wolves are just, you can't kill a wolf here. You'll go to prison if you kill the wolf. But the wolves will come in and kill people's sheep. They kill their other livestock here. You see in Japan, the bears are going wild. The Japanese bears, Masako and I were just with a bear hunter a couple months ago in Japan, eating bear with chopsticks that he had just killed the day before. You know what I mean? He's killed 50 bears this year. 50 bears he's killed this year, right? Because the bears are running wild in the rewilding program. It's called rewilding. Now, again, a lot of the World Economic Forum people, when you say this, In the past, they would go, that's conspiracy theory. And I'm like, oh, here it is on your website. Here's the link, right? They're actually doing it. As soon as you say it, you're like, and here's the link, from you, and so they're clearly doing it. And like, the rewilding is a big deal with wolves or coyotes or in rewilding with also things like screwworms to kill off our livestock, right? To kill off our food supplies, get rid of the farmers, get them off the land. Masako and I were just with a dairy farmer in Netherlands a few days ago named Jordan. I've actually known him for several years now. Actually, I took Jordan Peterson to his farm one time several years ago. And part of the, he talks about the wolves, the wolves, there's no wolves on his particular land, but they're coming in across Germany and they're saying, that they're just wild. But I read and I speak German. So when I see a wolf attack in Germany, I'll read it in their newspapers. They always blame it on global warming. They always blame the farmers. It's not the farmers. They're using them to get rid of the farmers. They're using the global warming to get rid of the farmers, and it's effective because actually they do an information war here in Netherlands and in Canada, United States, and always blame the farmers. It's the farmers did this, the farmers did that. No, it's not the farmers. The farmers are one of the people they're trying to destroy, and the fishermen. They're very effective. They want the food supply, and this is an old game as well. Controlling the food supply is an old game. People will look back, to something 30 or 40 years ago and say, see, he said it right here, as if it was new at that time. No, this goes back way back. I don't know where it begins. You can't seem to find the beginning of it, right? The controlling of the food supply has been one of the key elements of, for instance, going back to one of the census called the pipe rolls, which people that study old English history know about the census of the pipe rolls in the 1100s, right? And, when the king was doing the census, and anytime somebody's counting you up in details, they're planning to control you, right? It has nothing to do with, they've done a huge census in Panama among the Indians a few years ago. I was out there when they were doing it. And I'm like, uh-oh, they're counting the Indians in great detail. I was watching them do it, going from hut to hut. And actually, I spent a day with one of the ladies doing the census, and I was asking her what's up. Anyway, but the census, anytime somebody's, again, that comes out of the Bible, counting up the people. Right. And but you see these census from the old days in England. You see that the king wanted to know where everything is at, and he wanted to know who has what, who has how many sheep or whatever, and the people were not allowed to hunt in the forest, the king's deer and all this stuff, right? It just complete controlling the food, and so this is old stuff. There's nothing new. There's nothing new at all. So you got people like King Charles, who basically is just an old boy. He's a boy in a man's costume, giving a knighthood the other day to this, I don't know if you saw it, but I put it on my X. And so so these people actually in charge now, whether it's allegedly in charge, I mean, nominally in charge, like Trump, they're actually just actors. They're actually just placeholders. It's a movie. The real players are behind the scenes, right? I mean, because, the real players are not the ones that are out there on the microphone all the time. I'm describing what's happening, right? It's not Trump. If Trump is gone tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Somebody else is going to replace him. Zelensky doesn't matter. Trudeau doesn't matter. King Charles doesn't matter. They don't matter. You have to look at the larger flows, right? So when people are hanging their hats on people like whomever, they typically don't seem to realize that he's just part of if you don't want your borders open, you have to close them. You have to make sure they close them. You have to make it difficult for them to operate. Keep in mind, everybody watching this can do something. Everybody. You can either do something or not do something. Sometimes not doing something can be very helpful. For instance, never support your enemy. When you're going, I'm choosing the least of the bad, right? That can be a logical trick. That's a cheese trap often, right? When you go, well, he was the least of the bad, or she was the least of the bad, right? That's right. But in reality, it's a false choice often, right? Now, sometimes in life, obviously, we have to choose the least of the bad situations. But I mean, obviously, but that's used also as a weapon to put two, well, I'm going to take the not mRNA one, or I'm smart, I'm not going to take the mRNA one. They're all weapons, right?
Right. That's right.
They're all weapons. It's a false choice. You want the red pill or the green pill or blue pill or whatever it was. They're both coming from a guy you don't know. You know what I mean? And so one thing that you can do is never send money to a bad choice. If he's the least of the bad choices, he doesn't suddenly become Saint Biden or Saint Obama or Saint Trump or Saint Bush, right? Because this is the mistake that often people will make in huge numbers is, okay, I'm choosing the least of the bad choices, and therefore I must give him all of my support. That guy pushed death jabs into us, right? What more do you need to see, right? You know what I mean? What more is there than that, right? Pushing the death jabs into our own population. Nothing more follows. And people will blame Fauci for that, right? That's what you needed to see. He showed his face. He's still showing it in 2026. By the way, Melania wore that silver dress at the New Year's gala. I don't know if you saw it. And they were playing Kaio Silver, right? They were playing the old, he's signaling obviously something with silver, obviously, which we already know about. But but what I'm getting to is the least of the bad choices often is just another ambush, right? And when you're an 18-year-old soldier learning ambush techniques, as I was doing, right? Just 18, not like a 25-year-old special forces guy or something, but like 18, right? You set up an ambush and you put mines in the ditch that they're going to jump into, right? You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? It's an ambush after the ambush, or you create what's called an area ambush. You ambush them there and some squirt out, but your other guys are going to get them over there. Some squirt out from that. The other guys you wear them out, run them down, they shoot their ammo. They're getting tired, and eventually your guys get them, right? That's called an area ambush. That also happens with intoxicants. That's an old game. This is nothing new about getting people off of one drug and onto another. I've got a book from the 1800s on opium describing how they would get people off of heroin and onto morphine and then and it was a circle. This is the 1800s, crystal clear, right? Nothing new under the sun. But likewise, when somebody goes, well, he gave us ivermectin, he gave us HCQ. I'm like, let's think this through. I mean, at the time I thought, ivermectin. I actually bought some in March of 2020, right? And I bought some in April. I can see it actually on my Amazon sales, right? Actually, it's there. I bought some on Amazon, right? You could buy it on Amazon. Now I look at that as that was probably an ambush, right? Because, okay, you don't have to take it. You got your HCQ, you got your whatever. But clearly they're doing a genocide. Clearly and nakedly, obviously doing a genocide against us using many mechanisms, whether that be the weather, and weather is manipulated. There's people that say that's conspiracy theory. It is absolutely being manipulated. Yes, 100%. I'm not getting into the chemtrail stuff, but the weather manipulation is absolutely real. 100%. Right. And
patents on that. So the government has patents on it. So
it's absolutely real. And that's just one component. There's many controlling the food supply, poisoning us through many, many mechanisms, which Catherine Austin Fitts talks about all the time. And so do many, many other people talk about these. There's so many ways they're poisoning. Yes. One was just a straight up, look at how many jabs the children get, right? And you can see putting fluoride in our water. Remember when we were younger, and if you raised a voice about the fluoride thing, you were a conspiracy theorist, right? But you can see that the collective IQ of the United States clearly is lower. I can see it because I spend so much time overseas. I go back to the United States and I smell dope all over the place in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland. I go all over America, right? I'm always smelling dope. You go to Amsterdam, dope everywhere. I had to stay in the Hilton Hotel over at Amsterdam recently by the airport, by Schiphol Airport. In that hotel, there was the smell of dope in the hotel, in the elevator, right? It's the same in the United States. It's the same in the United States when I'm, and you have to stay hotels there or whatever in Washington, D.C. You can smell it in the hotels, clearly reducing the collective IQ of the people. Again, I want to go back to The main way we took out the Indians was fire water, straight up. And other weapons that have been used around the world by Chinese and others is obviously opium. They use opium a lot. They use now fentanyl and other drugs. These sorts of things are old weapons, and they're extremely effective. Old farmer intelligence for the bad farmers out there. There are some bad ones. When they realize that their farmer buddy over there, their neighbor, he's got a lot of land, but he likes whiskey, you start giving him bottles of whiskey, cases of whiskey for his birthday, for New Year's, for whatever. You're always giving him cases of whiskey because you want to buy his farm, right? It's very effective. Those are old tricks that are used at local scales, but they're also done on big scales, right? You want to buy your neighbor's house, give him whiskey or whatever. Eventually he's going to be in debt and you buy it out, right? This is how this stuff works, and it works on a national scale. Entire country. I took a member of the Japanese government, a member of their diet, it's their parliament, right? About 2 weeks ago, I took him after we were at this gala together, and I asked him, I said, tomorrow, let's get together, and I'm going to take you to these dope stores in Amsterdam. And I want to take you to, so I spent actually all day with him. In the morning, we went to these 2 dope museums, cannabis museums, and we went to dope stores, and then we went to this lunch with these politicians, right? But the point is that when I showed him, I said, this is what they want to do in Japan. And I showed him a picture that Masako and I took him into these dope stores, and I said, these same toys here, these bongs that they sell, these toys that you smoke the dope out of the toy's head, these are for children, obviously. They're selling these in Kyoto, in Japan. They're not selling cannabis yet, but they're opening the stores. And I showed him photos of a store that Masako and I were just in Kyoto, and I showed it to him, and he goes, that's around the corner from my house. And he looked it up on Google Earth while we were looking, and he's like on his phone, and he goes, and he could see the same photo, but I had taken it with my phone. And so he said, as soon as I get back to Japan, he's back there now. He's going to go look. I said, this is what they're doing. They're setting up these stores first, like they did in Thailand. And suddenly the law is going to change, and they already have their infrastructure. See, these same toys that they're selling in Amsterdam, I bought some in Amsterdam. I bought them in Japan, and I bought them in Thailand, the same exact toy, right? And the reason I did that is because I want to use them on live streams to go. It's clearly the same people behind this, right? It's the same gummies, the same everything. They just changed the language on the thing. So what I'm getting to is that cannabis isn't legal yet in Japan, but they're setting conditions to do that. We got Trump there who's pushing. He wants dope to be legal across. That's Soros' policy. Soros wants open borders and free dope not free, but he wants dope. He wants it legal coast to coast, right? Now, obviously, the dope heads will go, what about alcohol? Now, okay, I said that already, right? Alcohol, intoxicants in general are used as a weapon, right? And these so-called, cannabis, it ain't the cannabis that used to grow by the river at the Ganges, right? There's something else. The Chinese are coming into the United States, coast to coast, California, Maine. They got huge plots in Maine. Epoch Times just had an article come out about it, and as have others written about it in Oklahoma, all over the place. These Chinese are coming in, growing huge amounts of dope, and they are selling it to our young people. And then you have dope heads like Joe Rogan come on and smoke dope in front of millions of young people. I'm probably the only person in America who's turned down going on Joe Rogan, just flat out turning down. Ain't no chance I'm going on a dope head show, right? He's had Elon Musk on there smoking dope in front of millions of young people. Now, again, let's talk about Elon for a moment. Supposedly the richest guy on earth. Supposedly Mr. Rocket Guy wants to put brain chips in people. However, he couldn't figure out how to get to his gigafactory in Germany without taking the jab, right? So he said, and he put on Twitter, he encouraged people to take the jabs back when that was a big thing, so he said the science is unequivocal. That's verbatim. You can look it up. He tweeted, he was telling people to take the jabs. The science is unequivocal, he said. And then he said he took 2 to go to Germany to go to his gigafactory. Now, Masako and I, we went to Germany multiple times. We were all over Europe at the same time, and we never took them, right? And we don't have rocket ships. We don't have our private jets. We're not the richest people in the world. We just went, right? And we were all over Europe. We never took it, right? And so, but Elon Musk, he said he had to take it to go. I'm like, oh, let's do the math here. Let's do some first principles. Let's just imagine I'm the richest guy in the world and I'm the super smart guy that everybody should listen to, right? I'm Elon Musk. I'm going to put a brain chip in you, right? I got these Tesla cars and whatnot. I'm cool, right? And I'm on social media 24/7, and I'm doing game shows and everything else, and I'm running around to parties dressed up like a crazy man, and I'm running around with my wife doing crazy stuff, and I'm running all these companies and doing rocket ships and stuff. It doesn't make sense. The math doesn't add up. But anyway, so Elon Musk is like, I had to take the jabs to go to my gigafactory. But let's just imagine how I would do it, right? If I were that powerful and I had a multi-billion-dollar gigafactory in Germany, and Germany is saying, well, Michael, to visit your factory, you're going to have to take the death jab. And I'd be like, okay, let's go. It's going to be like this. I'm coming to my factory on Monday, right? I'm going to land and I'm going to get off the airplane. If you don't let me go to my factory, that factory will be closed down for the length of time that I'm not allowed to go to it unjabbed. And if you don't let me in, that factory is closed. We're closing it today, right? Everybody go home. We will close the factory. That simple. That would have worked. You know where that worked? That worked in Belize. Misako and I went up to Belize to see Mennonites, right? Mennonites grow a lot of the food in the country of Belize. Belize is, borders the southern border of Mexico. Guatemala and Belize are on the southern border of Mexico. We went to Belize specifically to talk to Mennonites. Mennonites refused to take the jab, right? Yeah, these are the simple Mennonites, right? I since I speak German, they speak Niederdeutsch. They speak a different German, but they can understand me, and I can understand about a third of them. But anyway, I can understand about a third of what they're saying because they're dialect. But they can understand everything I'm saying, and I think anyway. So, but I speak high German. But but the Mennonites, the government of Belize tried to force the Mennonites to take the jabs. But the Mennonites grow a lot of the food in Belize, and they don't cause many problems. I mean, they're Mennonites. Everybody loves them, right? They're super reliable. People get their furniture made by them and all this stuff. And we were going into their furniture stores and their ice cream. They make ice cream. It's not like all Mennonites don't have computers. That's not exactly true. They have some do and some don't. But anyway, so the government of Belize tried to force the Mennonites to take the jab. You know what the Mennonites said? No. They said, we're not going to do it. We'll leave, right? So they started to leave. And then the Belizean government said, oh, okay, you don't have to take it then because we're going to lose our Mennonites. They produce a huge amount of our food and they don't produce a huge amount of our problems, right? So now, but we were talking with the Mennonites. They're like, no, after we saw the face of this thing, they sent a reconnaissance down to Suriname. If you look in the news, Mennonite Suriname, you'll see that they're opening a new front down there because they're international. The Mennonites, the Amish, all these people, they're not just like local farmers in Ohio. I love Amish people. And Mennonites, I get along with them great. And they're farmers. It's easy to get along with farmers. And the thing is when the Mennonites said no, the government's like, oh, okay, we're not going to play that game because we're going to be in trouble if the Mennonites leave. What about Elon Musk, big rocket guy, supposed to be the smartest guy in the world, yet he spends more time on X than I ever do, right? Not just X because he allegedly owns it, but also on all these programs he's always doing. Listen, I do interviews like with you. Yeah. I do all same sort of stuff. I know how much time it takes because you do it too. There is no way in the world that you could do all this stuff and then just change and go and look at your rocket motors, right? And then go to your boring company and then look at the Tesla thing and then look at the satellites, the Starlinks and all this stuff. There's no way that you can manage all these things and be that super smart guy and still fall for the jab and have a drug problem that he's talked about, his prescription one, and smoking dope. There is no chance on planet Earth that the intuition on my shoulder is going, he's lying. It's a fake. It's not true. And that intuition is like basically blowing the door off the hinges. It's clearly not that guy. He's an actor. He's part of the game, right? And so that's something that people need to keep in mind. We are surrounded by actors and actresses, right? This is a big thing. And until we use our discernment, we're going to stay in that trap forever. That means realizing don't save a lot of cash in your bank account, right? Don't even save a lot of cash. You need to at least have enough, if you can, for maybe a few months, right? So that you have time to transition and think through other things, because of your bank. Sooner or later, you're going to wake up and the bank ain't going to work. Sooner or later. It's just a matter of time, right? I don't know when that time will be. I think, and occasionally it's actually happened in different places, obviously, over time. It's not like it's never happened. And what has happened before shall happen again, right?
Yeah.
So in any case, what I'm getting to is discernment. Your intuition is your number one advisor on your discernment. And people like Elon Musk, do not listen to them. One of the things I always hear is supplied answers. We all give supplied answers sometimes. Misako and I, my wife and I, we always talk about if a supplied answer comes out of my mouth, she is to alert me immediately, right? And she doesn't actually do any. Her thinking processes are very pristine, actually. She's got very good logical skills and filters. Very, very good. And so, but supplied answers are answers that are put into your mind that then pop out. Like, for instance, if I say the Chinese are using drugs as a weapon, they're really pouring them over Europe and whatnot, a supplied answer is they're getting even for the opium wars. That's a supplied answer, right? That's it. So if that comes out of your, or let's talk about Taiwan. Taiwan, that could go hot at any moment, right?
Right.
And people will say, well, China's just taking back their breakaway province. But even I see historians all the time saying this. And CIA analysts on, writing articles and whatnot, how the breakaway province of Taiwan. But in fact, let me show you how long Taiwan was part of China. I'm going to write it on this page. Guess. That long. 0 days.
Oh, wow. I can see a zero.
Zero. It was never part of China. Never. Ever. Right? And people always go, no, you don't understand. I'm like, actually, I've heard enough, right? I've challenged a few people. I'm like, I know you got all the PhDs and all this stuff. I'll bet you right now, $10,000 in gold or silver that you're not going to be able to prove that it was ever part of China. I am calling you out right now. I'm betting you $10,000. Nobody has taken me up on it because they suddenly realize, oh, stuff's getting real. That guy's calling me out. He's calling me out, right? Like, yeah, I'm calling you out. When was it part of China? Never. That's a supplied answer. So you have to go back to first principles, right? Information war is intense, right? You have to go back. What do we really know? We really know. I think that bottle cap will drop out of my hand and hit the thing. So it takes a lot of study. I've been a lot of time in China, Taiwan. Misako and I were in Taiwan again recently. It was never part of China. It just never was, right? But China needs that routes and resources. They need Taiwan and they need Okinawa, all of Okinawa for routes and resources, the island chain that blocks China in, right? And remember, it doesn't do any good to take Taiwan if you don't take Okinawa. So China is running a big information operation now. It's been going on for years. I've written 3 books about it. They're only in Japanese, unfortunately, because I've been trying to wake up the Japanese, which has worked to some level. But the not enough. I'm not happy. I want it to work more. We're going to go back to Japan is very important. Our relationship with Japan is extremely important for Japan and for the United States. Our relationship with Thailand, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, these are very important relationships for the United States. That's why I spend so much time over there, right? But you look at Japan. China is running an information war saying Okinawa, which is Japan, which is where my wife is from, Misako is from Okinawa, is an old kingdom called the Ryukyu Kingdom, right? So China is saying those are not even Japanese. They're Chinese, and they were part of the Ryukyu Kingdom, which was Chinese, is what they're saying. It's a lie. And that Japan took that. So what China is doing is setting conditions in the information space to attack Okinawa and blaming Japan for taking Okinawa, right? So because if you look at the map if you're going to take Taiwan, you need to take Okinawa. And I mean, it's the whole thing, right? And they're going to go for it. They're clearly going to go for it one way or the other. They spent years setting conditions, information conditions. And again, this is nothing new. President Grant in 1879, in volume 29 of his 32-book series on his letters, which I have in our library in Japan, you go to volume 29, and President Grant, he's in Japan. He's warning Japan and he's warning China that outside influencers are going to try to get you two to fight over Ryukyu, which is Luchu. He called it Luchu. Its old name is Luchu. They're going to get you to fight over that and loan both of you money. Here we go with those guys again. This is 1879. This is before the Fed. He's actually warning. He's like, outside influences are going to get Japan and China to fight over Ryukyu or Luchu, and which is Ryukyu, which is Okinawa. and then they're going to loan you both money and they're going to own you both. Is this an old game or what? And that's 1879. He's warning the clearest word. You know, he was an army general, right? He started off as a lieutenant. He did a lot of war. He was down in Panama. He was Mexican-American War as well. He was all so many war, Civil War. And so he writes like a soldier, which is crystal clear. You know, he's writing to the Emperor of Japan. He's telling the Emperor of Japan this, and they're writing back and forth in the letters. So if you look in volume 29 of his letters, it's a huge book series. You'll see that he's actually warning about exactly what's happening today, 1879, right? So again, all this stuff, it may look new, but it's not. So it's very informative to study why would they even fight about that? Routes and resources. That's what that one is about. That's not about ideology. That's about routes and resources, that particular battlefront.
That's fascinating. I have one more follow-up question. We have probably about 5, maybe 10 minutes left. So you were saying earlier with, and I'll take the United States, the invasion that we've had. And you said that if people don't like it, the invasion across the border and the takeover one by one of U.S. cities, people need to man up and stop it. So that was the phrase that you said. So please expand on how can we, the people, man up and stop this? Because I don't know one U.S. citizen who likes one thing that they're seeing from this invasion across of people who do not fit. It's like third world countries have been dropped here and they're not assimilating. They're taking territory is what they're doing. And so how do we man up and stop it, Michael?
Well, everybody, let's give an example of Border Patrol. I've been across the entire U.S. southern border from SpaceX, which is on one edge on the Gulf side of Mexico, all the way to San Diego. I've been across the entire thing. Took many months, and a lot of that was on the Mexican side, and all of it on the U.S. side. And I saw on the American side many U.S. Border Patrol loading the buses and U.S. National Guard, like Texas National Guard actually, and Texas Guard as well, and Texas DPS loading the buses and helping those people invade the United States. And when I would ask them, "Why are you doing this?" and they're like, "The Mexican cartels." They would almost all blame the Mexican, not all of them. There were a few that actually realized what's going on. There's a very few. It's a small percent, like less than 5%, way less. Let's say 2%. And I talked with them for many months, right? I was talking with them constantly, right. And they would say, you know, Mexican cartels are doing this. I'm like, okay. Did Mexican cartels bring those Chinese people in from China that you just put on the bus like 1 minute ago? They're on the bus. They're looking through the window right now at us. Mexican cartels didn't pick those people up in Beijing and bring them through here, right? Mexican cartels didn't pick up those Somalis you just loaded and all these Eritreans and everybody else. They didn't bring those. That's not Mexican cartels. That last little bit, the last few miles, Mexican cartels involved with, but there was people all along the way. The biggest player in this is the United States of America, right? We are the number one funder of the United Nations, right? We're the and the United Nations is the one doing it. They have an office at Schiphol Airport at Terminal 3. Walked into Terminal 3 at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. Look, IOM, International Organization for Migration, is right there to the left. Walk through the little rotunda doors, go to the left. You'll see them giving tickets and helping people get on airplanes to come to the United States and other places, right? IOM has offices in Buenos Aires and all over the world. And New York is one of their headquarters. Misako and I, we went into the Buenos Aires office and asked for a job, actually. But it was actually we found their office. Actually, it was unmarked. But anyway, they didn't give us a job. But imagine
that, Michael.
but the point is and others that are doing this. One of the big invasion arms is Catholic Charities. And another one is, I mean, the Vatican is deeply behind us, as are Zionists, like the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, the highest.org. So Catholic Charities, Lutheran Services, hundreds actually, but some of the big ones, the biggest international players are like Catholic Charities. I mean, the Vatican is directly involved, right? And highest Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. Interestingly, this one fake Holocaust survivor, older woman, and I think it may have been Colorado. She got attacked by one of the guys that came across the border, and she's claimed that she's a Holocaust victim. She's one of those that turned out to be fake, right? She's like, I'm a Holocaust, but yeah, actually, when you look into her biography, it absolutely did not happen. But she's wearing a highest tag. She's wearing a highest badge, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, which is helping these people come through. I took Laura Loomer and Brett Weinstein and other Zionists actually down to the Darien Gap and showed them this stuff. They're way against highest, by the way. They're not for this. They're clearly, they want the borders closed, right? But what I'm getting to is that these people that they're going to end up killing a lot of Jews, obviously, and Christians as well. But as soon as it happens, they're like, oh, they're killing the Jews again. It was highest. She's wearing a highest tag, and then she got attacked by an illegal invader, right? It was like, you're supporting the people who brought him in, who attacked you. You are the one. You, first of all, a fake Holocaust victim. She's complete. You can look her up online. Look at highest supporter attacked by a migrant, quote unquote, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And you'll see that she's a fake Holocaust survivor and all that stuff, right? And so you can't make up this stuff. And so I mean, they're bringing these people in, and then they're going to end up burning down mosques and not mosques, well, maybe, but I mean, churches and synagogues and whatnot. They're going to burn them down. There was just a church that burned in Amsterdam less than 48 hours ago. I don't know who did it mysteriously. And the church has been there since in the 1800s, right? We'll go over there and check it out when we get back to Amsterdam. We didn't rush over to watch the flames, but I mean, it's, there you go. And this is the thing. The same people that are claiming to be victims are setting the conditions to be victims. In many cases, professional victims are always predators. I've never seen an exception of this. This goes on a personal level, and this goes on tribal levels, and it goes on national levels. You see, the Chinese Communist Party is a professional victim. They're always, look what the Japanese did to us. Look what the British did to us. Look what the Americans did to us. And they just skip what they did to the Tibetans, right? And the Uyghurs. Masako and I, we had a 3-hour plus dinner with the nephew of the Dalai Lama recently in Taiwan, right? And, we know him. We will see him again soon. But yeah. He's not in Tibet. He's in Taiwan because of what the Chinese, nobody has killed more Chinese than Chinese. Nobody, right? They've killed tens of millions of their own people in famine and war and everything else. And then they blame the Japanese, right? Like this book. This information war book. I found this on Catherine on her bookshelf. I'm going to bring it up to her when we talk tomorrow. But the rape of Nanjing, right?
Yeah.
I've been to Nanjing. I've been to that museum, by the way. It's total professional victimhood. I've never seen such. I've studied this. The author of this is Iris Chong. I have her autopsy, right? I know a little something about this book, right? I'm not your average guy that talks about the rape of Nanjing. I went to Nanjing. I've seen her statue in Nanjing. I spent all day in that museum there. I've studied this. The guy who recruited her, his name is Ignatius Ding. He lives in Cupertino, California. He's a CCP operative, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, I can go on for hours about this. Russell Lowe, his good friend, is now in charge of the Comfort Women operation. He was the spy on Feinstein's staff. One of my research partners, who happens to be an Orthodox Jew, actually is the one who discovered that Russell Lowe was a spy on Feinstein's staff. He was her driver. Russell Lowe was her driver. He's close friends with Ignatius Ding, who recruited Iris Chong. We know more about this in our little pinky than most of these analysts know, right? This is what we do. We go to museums all over the world. We go talk with people all over the world. China, they're not going to let me back in because they kicked me out of Hong Kong last time, put me on the airplane. But I mean, we go all over the world looking at this, right? And we know this topic very, very well. We're in a state of war. Information war is the highest form of warfare. Psychological operations is a subset of information war. And psychological operations, I mean, that's what this is all about, right? Intoxicants, no intoxicants, none. People that and remember, the music and the intoxicants are in a fatal dance together. They're designed to go together. Like a friend of mine, a good Christian friend of mine in Texas, sent me a video on New Year's Eve, and he was at something in Colorado, actually. And it was the guy singing, his singer singing the New Year's song. And he's talking about high on cocaine. And it's one of those famous songs. You know what I mean? They're singing, it's all these songs about cocaine and how great dope is. And there I met her in a bar and all this crap. It's all blended in there to make it just part of your, after you go off to war, then you're supposed to come back and be an alcoholic and everybody's supposed to feel sorry for you. No, don't take that bait, right? No, you're supposed to come back after you went to war and lead your people, lead your family, lead your people, lead your neighborhood, lead the baseball team that you coach, lead the school that you teach, lead the office that you're in, lead yourself, right? You're not supposed to be a drunk. I don't want to hear about crybaby war stories. Everybody got killed. I know, I was there too. I was there for a lot of people getting killed. I almost got killed many times. And guess what? I'm not sitting here drunk asking for sympathy, right? We don't have time for that. We're in war. We stay in war, stay on the front, right? And that's what this is all about. We have to not accept the things that they pour into us. And part of that is assigning you how you should think and feel. They tell you how you should think. They tell you how you should feel. I have friends that go to the VA, the Veterans Affairs, and they're like, oh, so you got PTSD from whatever. I wrote an article about PTSD about, 15 years ago. You can look at the comments on there, right? And I forgot the name of it, but just look up my name and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, whatever. And you'll see all these psychologists and whatnot leaving comments and going, that's the most accurate talk I've ever seen on PTSD, because I'm not holding anything back. I'm like, you're going to the psychologist. He's telling you you're crazy. He's giving you drugs, and now you're crazy. And now you got to get drugs to fix this other thing. It's like right out of that opium book that I got from the 1800s. People are going in, getting cured from the heroin with morphine. It's like, it's a cycle. This is old stuff. They want to keep you in the, like Catherine Austin Fitz will say, what'd she say? What does she say? She says like addiction is the plan, or addiction is she says it more eloquently. You know how she is. Basically she's she asked me one time, what would I do to fix, to start working on our problems? I'm like, clear out the intoxicants, do an information war. And I didn't realize it, but she has written extensively about that. So she gave me one of her manuscripts. It's not published. I wish she would, but I'm not going to say much about it, but she talks about this in great detail. Like, she really knows this subject quite well. And the thing is if we do an information war, I'm not saying lock up all the dope smokers and all that stuff. And they'll say, what about the 1920s and all that stuff? I'm not saying lock everybody else up. I'm saying do an information war, that a campaign, let's say, that makes it good to not be crazy, that makes it good not to be Cheech and Chong dope addict creeps, right? That makes it's not cool. You're not cool. You're not cool that you don't study. Calling people geeks because they study hard. You know what I mean? It was hard to call me geek because if I didn't do so many sports when I was in high school and that sort of thing, they would have called me a geek, because I had like half of my life was geek and the other half was, let's fight. But calling people geeks and making them feel bad for studying, I mean, that's poison. We want the geeks to be strong. I want the geeks to be as geeky as they can get, right? But I mean, I want them to know how to do very sophisticated mathematics and to know physics to the nth degree, right? And engineering. We want that, right? But all these things that were inserted into our firmware is, oh, the geeks are, they're nothings and whatever. And the jocks, they're nothings. So so the athletes are nothings too. They're stupid. They're trying to make it out like that. But because they're trying to make us, the things that make us strong, they're trying to make them uncool. So what I'm getting to is the things that make us strong, like being an athlete, like very serious athlete, that should be really cool. The things that should be really cool should be, that guy is really good at mathematics. He might not know how to do sports, but he's really good at mathematics, right? And so we can blend this together because it's a team, right? We have to have people that can do as a group, we can do a lot more. Obviously, we're not Rambo is a movie, right? In reality, we have to work as teams. We have to work as tribes. We have to work as families. They destroy our families with these intoxicants and that sort of thing, and this crappy music and whatnot. You know, if you have one alcoholic or drug addict or gambler in your family, it's like getting a missile through the window, right? And, you know, and everybody watching this has had this experience. You know, people can audit their own life and go, yeah, I know what he's talking about, because it either happened to me personally or it happened to somebody close to me. I don't know any exception to that. We all have had personal experience with it. Another thing that we've all had experience in our family lines with, everybody watching this through our family lines, everybody watching, whoever you are, we have all had family that survived many famines, many pandemics, many wars. All of us. There is no exception. We are the children of survivors, right? We are the products of people that can, 10 days with no food, you're not going to starve to death. Your olfactory senses are going to get better, right? It's like, you're not going to like faint because you don't have 10 days of food, unless you got a medical problem, right? You're not going to faint. You're going to go out and get a rabbit,
Right.
Go get some fish, you know what I mean? And so your ears are going to work better. Trust me. And so what I'm getting to is we're all the products of very rugged lines of people, everybody watching this, right? And they're trying to diminish us. The beast that wants to destroy us weakens us with intoxicants, with gambling, with music that makes you sad and all this sort of stuff, right? And with habits that make us feel bad instead of feeling good, with habits that break our families apart, confused. I had an Afghan driver here in Netherlands. I got him as as an Uber driver at the airport. And then I drove with him for like 20 or 30 minutes one day. And he's like, they're doing so many drugs here. It's dangerous on the streets at night. He's sorry, I need a drink of water. And he goes, the men and the women don't know men from women. They don't know the difference between men and women here. And I'm like, wow. So I got his number. And then I had to take another trip that was a couple of hours long on a different day. And I took him again. So I hired the same driver so I could talk with him, and I had to drive somewhere anyway. And so it was an expensive Uber, but it was a great conversation. And he was talking about these sorts of things. Like, he came from Afghanistan. I spent 2 years in Afghanistan, so it was easy to talk about. I mean, I've been to the places where he was talking about. Yeah. And he was talking about that so many drugs here, and it's dangerous even for Afghans to be on the streets at night because there's so many drug addicts, right? And the men are confused about being women, the women are confused about being men, and he and his ecosystem see the weakness. They clearly see the weakness, and they see the wealth in the weakness. There's only one way this ends, right? First, you have to clean up yourself, right? Which is not hard to do. Just stop, right? You don't need like 5 years to get over it. Just stop, right? And then start other things. Your mind will collect for those who may have problems, and then collect your teams, right? And remember, cowards are natural traitors. So you got to keep the cowards out of the inner circles, right? And so the bottom line is, it's up to us. We all came from very strong family lines. There's nobody here. There's nobody listening that did not come from a strong family line. That's now, right. Keep in mind, family lines get broken. They get broken because wars happen. They get, have to leave the entire country, and parents get killed, orphans, all kinds of things. There's things that happen, obviously, right? But then we're very resilient. We're made of resilience, right? That's what you're resilient. That's why you're known as for resilience, right? Mm-hmm. You are that, right? You specifically are that, right? And so you're just that essence. And so we just have to replicate that, plant the mustard seeds, right? And just plant mustard seeds. And because, one of the best things that you can do is spread strength, right? Spread encouragement to each other, but also only with accurate information, not falling for tricks, discernment, the little voice, intuition.
I have absolutely enjoyed our conversation, Michael. It's like you said, I mean, we could talk for days. I could talk for days with you. You're going to have to come back on the show again soon, whenever it's convenient, because I have many other questions I would have asked if I hadn't run out of time. And
we went for 2 hours, didn't we?
We did. Yeah.
I told you I'll go as long as you want to go.
Yes, you
I'll
did.
keep going.
And we did. Yeah, I would love to keep going if I didn't have to hop off too. So, as we close, how can people follow you, reach you? What are your social medias?
I'm on Substack under my name, Michael Yon, Y-O-N, Yankee Oscar November, and I'm on X, allegedly owned by Elon Musk. And then I do a lot of interviews. Did a great one with Catherine Austin Fitz. Is that up yet? And oh, good Lord, Liz Gunn. That one really has taken off, and the people really love the Liz Gunn interview. And oh, so many. I've gone on with people like Tucker Carlson and
Yes.
all those guys. I mean, the only one that I've flat refused to go on is the Dopehead Joe Rogan. Yeah, I'm just not going to go. If I bring one listener to Dopehead Joe Rogan show, that will have been a failure, right? I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I've seen you on the Steve Bannon too quite a bit. So
yeah,
you are.
It's been a while because I go after Trump too much. Right?
Oh.
So, I mean, I still have communication with Bannon, but Trump. I'm just calling the balls where they land. I'm just, I'm American. I'm American to the core, and I don't see Trump as that. You can see yourself. You can see your same and you can see your opposite, right? That's why my sister, since I was young, she said, you have great gaydar, right? You can see gay people and I'm like, because I'm absolutely the opposite. I don't have anything against gays. Go be gay if you want to be gay. Have fun, right? I'm not gay. So I can spot gay people and I can spot myself, right? You can spot yourself and you can spot your opposite. Trump jumps off the page to me. He's my opposite. I can see his X-ray against the clouds. If I hold him up to the sun, I see his X-ray. How do I predict Trump so well? People are like, you have been actually very accurate with Trump. I'm like, it's easy. He's my photo negative, right? So I just pick what would I do, and I pick the opposite. And that's what he does, right? He just does whatever I would do. He does the opposite, right? He does the death jab, right? He's still sticking with it. Fauci fooled him. The people that are like, Fauci fooled him. I'm like, seriously, man, you got whatever you're on. Stop it. It's like, it's like Fauci, whatever, man. Anyway, Trump is just an actor. Anyway, it's down to us. This is war. Mistakes can and will cost you your life. This is no joke. You get it wrong because I got to believe in something. No, you don't. You don't have to believe in one man, right? There's no man that you have to believe in. You have to believe your intuition and believe God. That's it. Believe your intuition. Study hard, believe yourself, but only after a lot of study, a lot of long walks, a lot of good sleep, and no intoxicants, right? And you need quiet time and think things through, and your intuition is going to be a much better guide than I would be, and it's a much better guide than anybody coming through the tubes, right? And so that's what people have to do is use their own God-given abilities, which are intense. Again, we are all children of very serious survivors. We didn't come from weak stock. Nobody listening to this came from weakness. We all came from strength.
Amen. And I always follow up with that saying, we all pray to the Lord and ask him, as we learn new information, how would he have us think? What is his is the ultimate discernment. So how would he have us think? What would he have us do? And then we can start fighting back in this informational war that we're being hit with on every side. So again, God bless you for being here, Michael. And to everybody listening, until next time, this is the Lynne Scott Haggerman Podcast, where light is breaking through and truth is rising, and so are we.
Breaks the shadow of the weary heart. Truth cuts the dark like a flaming dart.